Hello, this is Hilary Robertson. Welcome to episode 33 of Harmonious World. This time I'm joined by composer, arranger, producer, flautist, pianist, Nicholas Gunn. Nicholas has just released his 21st album called Sound Condition. And the track that I've started with is the opening track, The Unfolding. In introducing this album, he says, "Music gives life to everything. In a chaotic world that often seems in turmoil, music transforms every cell of our being and gives us hope, a sense of purpose and direction, reminding us that the connections we make with each other and our natural world are central to our happiness." Sound Condition features 4 vocal tracks with the voice of Alina Renee, and alongside those vocal tracks are 6 instrumental tales of bliss, as Gunn describes them. Nicholas was born and raised in the UK, but now lives in the States. I was delighted that he was able to join me for this latest conversation for Harmonious World, and I hope you enjoy it. Hi.
Hi, Hilary. How are you?
I'm good, Nicholas. Thanks. How are you?
I'm well. You can hear me okay?
I can hear you absolutely just fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, you too. You've still got a British accent.
Yeah, it's been a long time, but it's always stuck with me about that much, especially when I talk to somebody like you.
Yes. Anyway, well, thank you for joining me on Harmonious World. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
I love your album.
Thank you.
Yeah, Sound Condition. It's amazing. It's a beautiful piece.
Thank you.
Tell me about the composition of the tracks first, because obviously, one of the things I'm fascinated by is the fact that you create them completely. I mean, apart from obviously the vocals on the 4 tracks on the album, you do everything.
Yeah.
So talk to me about the composition process. Do you sit and write lyrics? Do you sit and write, I don't know, a piano line first? How does it come about?
Yeah, so I mean, it depends on what I'm doing. But the one thing is trusting, trusting that everything I'm about to do is going to lead down that path. And after 27 years of doing it, I sort of just kind of trust my process. But my process sort of sounds something like this. If I'm about to do a vocal track, what I do is I build out a piece starting with normally at least 4 to 8 progressions within a key signature. Let's say, for example, are you musically trained, or do you understand music?
Sorry. Yes, I am. Yeah.
Okay. I don't want to go too deep in it.
No, please do.
So my formatting is critical to how I approach music, because I believe in the psychology of melody. And what I mean by that is I believe a melody is far more memorable when it is supported by great progressions. For example, if you were to listen to a hit song that we already know, let's say Adele's Hello, for example, and the audience was introduced to that melody without any of that other compositional structure, I don't think people would pay much attention. Maybe if she sang it, but speaking just of the melody. So my point being is that the way a melody is framed is all important to how it's received. And so I'm very critical with starting with at least 4 progressions on a verse. I can get really complex and move to 8 progressions if I want to build it out to a pre-chorus. But my stuff is very structured with regards to classic pop music. I usually stick to 16 measure verses, 16 measure pre-choruses, which is normally the hook nowadays. And then the chorus, if it is a vocal chorus, depending on what genre I'm working in. So I kind of build my pieces that way. And then I hear the lead in my head. I just hear it here. It's constantly singing away at me. And I guess it's a great imagination perhaps, But what I do is I literally get on my voice recorder, and with my awful voice, I sing into my voice recorder, just whatever. But I phrase it in a way, non-lyrically, so those lyrics are coming into my head the way I need to, word the phrasing I'm singing into my phone. So it's like this little bizarre process I have. And it's that simple. It's really just quite honestly that simple. The rest is all production and sonic quality and how these sounds marry together and how to build it out. And I'm telling you, since I got into electronic music and into dance music, I've become a far better producer.
Because you found your niche. You found where your ears always wanted to be, maybe.
Actually, it's application mixing. It really comes down to understanding frequency and how to mix properly.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so sound choices built around that understanding become more important than they used to. I mean, back in the day when I first started in the 90s, there was a lot more acoustic recordings with microphones and stuff. And I still do a lot of that, but I really love the spatial aspects of working with electronic music and synths and so forth, especially in today's age. The technology is insane. But there's a lot of saturators with frequency on the bottom end, all the way through to mids and the highs, and loudness, and all of those things really matter in today's mixes more than they ever have done in the past. So I've become a better producer and a better engineer because of my involvement in electronic music. And so when I took that and brought it back into my instrumental background where I first started, there became this really cool marriage.
Yeah. One of the things I love is your flute. I think especially on The Unfolding and My Body is a Temple, the flute bits on that, they're just beautiful. So what made you decide that those would suit the flute?
It's all here.
Right. Okay.
It's all just whirring away in my head. It's the ability to trust. It's 27 years of just sitting in front of a computer and in front of speakers, just going over and rehashing through sounds. And you get a really kind of good roadmap for where you want to be. So and there is a deliberate attempt on all of my recordings nowadays, especially with sound condition, to bridge markets. So I don't know if you're familiar with other work I'm doing in my career, but I'm doing a lot of work with Armada Music, which is a dance label.
Yes.
Giant in Amsterdam. So I've been doing a lot of work with them, and they've been doing a lot of remixes for my tracks as well. But because of that, I'm a big trance fan. There's a lot of influence with business sounds that come from the trance world. The way the pads are filtered, the use of using EQ filters, programming EQ filters, is all important to how things build and deflate. And all of those things are techniques used in current electronic music. So when I approached The Unfolding, I said I saw the marriage of those two contrasts. Where I come from with the bamboo flute, married with this sound that is what I consider to be a current sound.
Yeah. And actually, it's quite hard to pigeonhole your music, isn't it? It's electronic. Well, exactly. And I think in some ways, the way we listen to music now is very different, especially since we can't listen to anything live. But if you think about, I used to go into record shops, and you would go to the bins that were labeled the things so there would be a jazz bin or 5 jazz bins or whatever, but you'd go to those, and that's where you would find your music. And even when things like Spotify started up, they were using very clear, boxes, if you like, to put things in. Whereas now I think people are starting to go, well, I like that, so I might like this. And it takes you in a different direction, into different, not even genres, they're just different music.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's becoming less about genre than it is about than it ever has been, I should say. I think, and I'm really involved in the business of music, especially since I own my own label, and I think that the importance of that is critical to how people find your music. I think this sound, if I were to be releasing this kind of sound in an impulse buy market where there are only CDs. So the only way I get listeners, honestly, is by the algorithm that Spotify and streaming algorithm through fans like this. You may also like this. And there's what's called an algorithmic playlist that happens within the marketplace nowadays that I end up on. And that's the way people are discovering my music today, because I can't be pigeonholed. And I love that because I when I first started, they put me in New Age and I cringed. I said, I'm not New Age. I mean, what is New Age? I always hated the genre thing. I just do me, right? But apparently my music did fit to that back then, but it doesn't really fit to that now, because it's this hybrid of all of these kind of cool things. I just do what I do.
Right. A couple of months ago, I interviewed a pianist called Chad Lawson. And he seems like he's a very similar type of, there's a spirituality about the music. Do you know what I mean? There's a sense of it's coming from somewhere within you. And I feel like he is the same as you, but the music is very different. Gotcha. But do you see what I mean? It's, and actually I think
authentic. Yeah, I think that's a big word today, is authenticity. And being in popular music markets on the side, I don't consider what I do to be a popular music market. I just consider it to be classic me. And that's why I put out works like Sound Condition on my own label, because there's no other label that's going to, I mean, there may be other labels that want to put it out, but they couldn't do it better than me, because I understand me. And I wouldn't expect anything bigger than that. And I don't want to jump into that ring of fire, so to speak. But I think the most important aspect of all this kind of music is the authenticity. Yes. And consumers are really smart. Like, they'll know when they hear something that really rings true with them. And you can hear the artists that are just trying to sound like everyone else so they can get on the playlists, or they can get on the label, and I mean, okay, if that's the path, that's cool, but that's not me. So
no. So when did you start writing? Because there's a whole kind of pre-COVID, COVID, and then hopefully we're going to be going into post-COVID. But so were these during COVID? Were these written, or were they pre?
Sound Condition was literally recorded between March and November of 2020, literally during COVID time. And it's really an expression of that year. And I often say to people, well, if you want to know what the definition of sound condition is, use it in a sentence, because they don't look at the title chord as you would in a sentence. Well, that person's in really sound condition.
Right.
Oh, hold on. Right. That means that they're in the best version, that or they're at their optimum, so to speak. And I watched the world, as we all did, around us with absurdity. I mean, people were challenged this year on freedom of expression, especially here in America, as you saw. We went through the most tumultuous time that this country has ever seen. And it doesn't matter what your political views are per se. The division was astounding. And I watched people that needed to find that center. And I also watched friends that surprised me that had a great sense of center throughout it all. And so out of all of that, here I am in my music studio throughout the entire year of 2020, writing all these tracks. And this is my experience. It's kind of like my expression of the year. If it's going to have a soundtrack, that's what it sounds like to me. That's what it's all about. That's what Sound Condition is.
Right. And I hadn't read that into Sound Condition. I'd read it as the condition of sound rather than sound conditioning. I've got it now. Yeah, I'm so glad we've had this conversation.
Well, it's deliberate.
Yeah. Yes, that double meaning.
And it's deliberate, and everyone looks at me. They look at me like, oh, how did I not get that? And because you don't use it in a sentence, it's like, oh, that person's in sound condition. A lot of us have used that terminology quite frequently, but for some reason, when you look at it as the title of this record, you think, oh, he's talking about frequency and sounds and what they mean to him and so forth. No, not at all. I'm talking about human beings. I'm talking about life. I'm talking about the relationships we have with each other. That's what this record is about.
Yeah. Wow. And it really is. I mean, I just think it's a stunning album. It really is.
Thank you. I greatly appreciate that.
And talk to me about your relationship with Alina.
Alina and I started working together back in 2017 with a act I had called Limelight. Was signed to Armada Music. As I told you, I'm a big trance head. I love dance music. I actually spent more time in the clubs than I did anywhere, which was such a juxtaposition for what people thought my life would entail, being this instrumental new age artist in the 90s, the quintessential long-haired new age artist. So basically, I started this act in 2017. I got signed to Armada, and I really wanted to write lyrics, and I never really written lyrics. I really wanted to start working with vocalists on a full-time basis. And so it was a great opportunity. And I was introduced to Alina, and it just happened to be the perfect marriage between my lyrics, my top line melodies, and her ability to perform those. And we kind of tested the waters with that act and did some great work, which then led to me using her on my Nicholas Gunn works.
Presumably she lives in California, or do you do it virtually?
Chicago. Yeah, so so most vocalists in the market today are very, very choosy with their choice of microphones and their private space. And remember the old days when you would show up for a session and the vocalist would be out there in the mixing booth and the producer is in the mix. He's, oh no, let's do it again. Take number 20, take number 30. It doesn't exist like that anymore. And it does, but that's very old school. A lot of singers in the marketplace I'm in right now really require a lot of personal space in order to track properly, especially well-known singers, and she's pretty well-known within the dance community. So her process was, well, can you rough the top line for me, you singing the part, which is so offensive. If you heard me sing, it's just awful. And so I would rough the part, I send it out to her, and she would track it. She would make it hers, and she would send me back her part because she loves her own choice of microphones and her own process. There's a lot of editing and a lot of mixing that happens after that with her part, but that's how we would work. So we never actually worked in the same room together.
Wow. And does she do 2 or 3 versions and send them to you, or does she just go, no, this is it?
So it depends on what my process would entail also. So normally, because I'm really into production and Ed very proficient with that, I usually take her first demo because I see the vision and I just chop it up and make it mine and do all kinds of crazy stuff to it. But for the most part, she'll send me what's called a first demo run. And 9 times out of 10, because she's so good and her process is so good, I usually choose that version. There's been a couple of times I'll go back and say, hey, can we have another stab at this? And can you work on this part or that part? And she'll send me another version back. But usually that's just the process. It's not complicated at all.
So talk to me about, apart from creating sound condition, what else has lockdown meant for you?
Oh my gosh. I'm fortunate. We've had a really good year. I have a brand new, well, he's not brand new, he's 2.5, my son, Davko, and my wife. We all exist in this space, and it's been beautiful. For some people, I would think lockdown would have been an incredibly lonely and hard experience, which it has been for many of my friends, especially if you were single. But for us, it's been a beautiful time. We've got to spend a lot of time together. We've gotten a lot accomplished in our personal lives. Because I'm not a big touring musician at this point, and I wasn't pre-COVID, that I've just knuckled down and really spent a lot of time in the studio. So it's 2020 was a great year for me. It was difficult having that kind of year for myself and watching my musician friends suffer, especially my touring musician friends. Some of them are just in really rough shape.
Yeah.
And that was the hardest part of 2020 for me, was watching good people suffer.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been, whether you're used to doing, performing a lot, or whether you're used to hearing a lot of music. I mean, I cannot believe how little live music I've heard. How the last gig I went to was on the 9th, I think, of March. And
sounds about right.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And it's not to interrupt, but watching the whole, how do we compensate for the lack of live performance by doing online performance has been a really interesting journey. Watching how people have tried to bridge those gaps. It's not the same, is it?
Not at all. Not at all. And it's incredible because so many people have reached that conclusion that actually we're all doing the same thing. So I'm sitting here listening and you're sitting there playing, and it's exactly the same, but it is so different because there's not that connection. So isn't it weird that music, you can, I mean, I'm listening to music all day, every day. I've got the radio on, or I've got, tracks that I'm listening to, or, albums I'm listening to, whatever. But I still feel the lack of music because it's not the same. Yeah,
it's not. It comes back to that authenticity type of thing. And it's nice. I have some friends who are accomplishing the living room concept thing really well when it comes to one-on-one conversation and that real raw vibe. I think a couple of shows like that's cool, but it really gets old fast because I don't know. There's that energy of being out and mingling and being with other people that love the same thing as you do, experiencing the thing that they love as much as you do. There's that whole. I guess you know what? It's taught us that connection is integral to our survival, and part of our sound condition. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And I still have little kind of these spirited conversations with my friends that said, "Oh no, this is the new norm. This is online performances like this are going to be the new thing." And I said, "No, come on. Let's be real. Come on, guys. If you've been in the industry as long as I have, people have always been performing and presenting video concepts of their live performances. Like I think Andrew Bocelli, when he just did his live performance, those kind of real spirited big performances when Yanni played at the Acropolis, for example, in New Age, and in the Taj Mahal, and these people that play, that's always been done. That's not a new thing. So it has always been done really well and really big and really large. And I think people love that because it's different. So this whole idea of just setting up shop in your living room and doing it over and over and over and over again is not the new norm, in my opinion. I don't want it to be the new norm.
No, I agree. And actually, I'm sort of taking a stand against even using the word normal, because I think there are some things that we need to hold tight on to some of the really good things that existed before, but absolutely hold on to some of the new things that have come out and the new ways of connecting. So
and I think there's some interesting platforms that have been developed that allow live streaming and obviously more streaming for artists, which is great because artists always need a great way to make money, because God knows the industry is certainly failing us when it comes to streaming. But to on my point to that, I think all of those things are really cool. I think if there's a way to make money from being online and it's quick and it's fast and it's instantaneous, I think that's always a positive thing, especially when it comes to musicians making money. But I just don't think, I think it's a pretty low ceiling.
Yeah.
I think it's useful for a certain aspect. I just don't want it to replace, and I don't think it will replace that really cool experience we have when we all go out and be together. So
yeah, I agree. And I think there are going to be some really significant moments for musicians that first, standing at the side of a stage again, waiting to go on and hearing the audience, out there. That's that moment where you're just about to step onto that stage. That's going to be the point where people go, this is why we do this. So
it's interesting, isn't it? Because it makes it that whole connection, the energy, the way energy works, and it transfers between people. And it's a spiritual concept. It's the way energy works in the universe. It's authentic and it matters and it's real, and you can't replace those things.
No.
I think 2020 has given us a real good look at that.
Yeah, and I hope that we can learn from it and not expect to just go back, just kind of almost wipe out 12 months and then just start again.
That would be great.
Well, yeah.
That would be great. That would be great. Yeah.
Yeah. I was talking to somebody yesterday on the phone and just saying, imagine if we'd known 12 months ago what we know now, what would we do differently? What,
Yeah.
I'd have started wearing a mask earlier, I tell you that much,
Yeah, I know.
Really nice to talk to you.
Likewise, absolutely. Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, thank you for joining me for that episode of Harmonious World, and I hope you enjoyed our conversation. We're going to play out with the title track of Sound Condition. Just the final few bars of it, just beautiful. I hope you enjoy it, and thank you for listening. Thank you for listening to the latest episode of Harmonious World. My name is Hilary Seabrook, and it's a great delight to bring this series of discussions with musicians and composers and writers and all sorts of people to you. Obviously, there's no point in having a podcast if people aren't listening, and I'm very grateful to my listeners for doing so. Thanks also to Joe English for composing and performing this new theme tune. So wherever you get your podcast, you can leave a review. You can share this with your friends and family, either as a link or on social media and that sort of thing. I'd be really grateful for that. Don't forget that you can subscribe now. There's a link wherever you get your podcasts. So have a great week, and please remember why I started this, which is just to try and make the world a little more harmonious. Thanks for listening to Harmonious World.